All right, okay. My name is Wayne Wright. I'm the bishop for the Episcopal Diocese of Delaware. And I'd like to ask my colleagues to introduce ourselves as we gather for this really unprecedented ecumenical interfaith gathering to speak about the death penalty.
I'm Rabbi Yair Robinson. I'm the Rabbi of Congregation Beth Emeth and the current president of the of DERECH, which is the Delaware Association of Rabbis and Cantors.
I'm David Popham. I'm Associate Conference Minister with the Central Atlantic Conference of the United Church of Christ.
Bishop Fran Malooly. I'm the Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Wilmington, which is the state of Delaware, and 9 Maryland counties, starting at Cecil County down toward the eastern shore, this side of the Chesapeake.
And also, you have a joint statement by church leaders that represent Bishop Wolfgang Hurst Lane of the Evangelical Lutheran Church, Bishop Gregory Ingham of the African American Episcopal Church, Bishop Peggy Johnson of the United Methodist Church, and James Mosley, who is the executive presbyter for the Presbyterian Church. Together, we represent all of the largest Christian churches in Delaware, and we speak on this issue with a common voice. And although they could not be with us today, they've asked us to speak on their behalf. So, Bishop Malooly.
You have in your packet a letter that I sent to the Senate and the House leaders back at the end of March. And I just want to share a couple of the paragraphs and then just maybe a suggestion. The issue of capital punishment is a morally complex one because of the apparent conflicting demands of justice and the preservation of human life. And yet the gospel message is forever one of forgiveness, reconciliation, rehabilitation, and charity to all, never with exception. There are many threats to human life, and at times life is treated cheaply. We see that often today. However, every life is a gift from God, and God alone is the master of both life and death. Last October, Pope Francis called for a worldwide abolition of the death penalty, and in his comments said, "It is impossible to imagine that states today cannot make use of another means than capital punishment to defend people's lives for an unjust aggressor. Today, imprisonment is effective in removing the serious offender from society and thus removes the danger to innocent life. Imprisonment allows time for repentance, reformation, and a change of heart." As the Bishop of Wilmington, the Catholic bishop, I represent 2 states. And in the Maryland part of our diocese, we've already repealed the death penalty. And I think hopefully are closer now. I would really like my representative, Deborah Heffernan, to be able to have a discussion with other House leaders to discuss the bill and to see what they think about an issue that seems to be gaining a lot of support to repeal the death penalty, that there are other means, other ways, obviously, through imprisonment, of taking care of those who are criminals and also giving them a chance.
I represent the United Church of Christ, which has a very long history in America. And you've probably been all over this particular issue, but find ourselves right now closely aligned with the Catholics on this and the others up here, as well, the Episcopal Church and the Jewish community on this particular issue. It has often been felt that the death penalty brings justice. We often quote the Bible, an eye for an eye, and other such texts. Those type of responses tend to alleviate our emotional need for revenge, but we would question whether they bring about true justice. Have they, once somebody has committed murder or an act that is punishable by capital offenses, is it a true act of justice to take their lives, or have we really given them the short way out, where they can no longer reflect upon what they've done, depending upon what you believe happens in the afterlife? And so we would strongly urge the legislation to move forward, the Senate Bill 40 to move forward, to speak to this issue about justice from the point of view of either restoring the person, or if that's impossible, then keeping the person within the prison system so that they hurt nobody else. Thank you.
Great. As bishops, we are faith leaders, we're pastors, and we're teachers. And as I go around the state of Delaware, and there are Episcopal churches, just as there are Roman Catholic, Methodist, United Church of Christ churches, all over our state, we are hearing that the people in our pews believe that this is the right time for the death penalty to end here in Delaware. And what we have heard certainly is echoed in the new poll that came out this week that said that 64% of our citizens, when polled, believe that the death penalty should be abolished when there's another alternative, which certainly exists. There are other ways to keep citizens safe in our state, and certainly we are hearing that. But also, as pastors, we have profound respect for victims of serious crime. We serve them, we serve their families, and we have respect for them. And also for police officers, public safety officials. And we stand together with everyone who respects the dignity of every life and our role for justice as citizens. And so we are calling upon our elected leaders to repeal the death penalty here in Delaware. We believe that this year, this is the right time for the bill to be debated by the whole House and for it to be passed and sent to our governor.
I'm wearing two hats this afternoon. One is as the rabbi of the only Reformed synagogue in Delaware, representing the Reform movement, which has long had a strong position against the death penalty and for abolishing the death penalty in our country. I'm also wearing the hat as the president of the Rabbinic and Cantorial Association of Delaware. And in the packet provided, there's a strong statement from the rabbis and cantors of Delaware, representing the largest congregations in Delaware, not only in Wilmington, but in Dover and downstate in Lewis as well, representing conservative, reform, reconstructionist, and independent communities that are calling for this repeal to take place. And to echo what my colleagues have said, there is no justice in the death penalty. There is no peace in the death penalty. And the time to repeal this form of punishment is now. And even if there are those, and I believe there are those of conscience, who believe that the death penalty is correct, it deserves a full hearing by the House. It deserves to be heard and debated vigorously by committee, but then to be released to the full legislature for debate, as it was debated fully in the Senate, and for the full House to be able to vote on it. And I believe, vote to abolish it, and to bring our ability as a state to bring true justice and true peace to this community forward.
Questions?
What would you say to the various police organizations, law enforcement organizations that frankly don't agree with you?
Let me respond if I can. My uncle was an FBI agent who was murdered in 1953, Grady Murphy in Baltimore. And since that time, I've always been anti-death penalty, simply because of what he said. They were, he and another agent were tracking down one of the top 10 noted criminals at that time who had come in from LA. And someone had given the word away when they went up inside of the town theater. Johnson opened fire and my uncle was gravely injured. He also was killed. When he was at the hospital a couple hours later before surgery, which he did not come out of, he asked, "What about Johnson?" And the other agent said, "Well, he was killed." And his last words before surgery, "May God have mercy on his soul." And this was the one who was being killed. It had a great impact on our family. Now, we had no trial. We had none of these long, drawn-out trials about death penalty or not, so we didn't have to go through all those difficult times that many do. Every year I celebrate with the state police in Smyrna, and we remember all their fallen heroes. And I do it with our interfaith and ecumenical leaders. And they include my Uncle Brady among their group when we pray for those who have been killed in action. But having said that, there are certainly some who feel very strongly that it might be a deterrent. I don't feel that way, but I just think that life imprisonment without parole is certainly the better way to go.
You know, and we have real respect for and take very seriously the role that police officers, public safety officers play in our state. And like Bishop Malooly, meet with them. There are state police and local police officers who are members of our churches. Like Bishop Malooly, I visit our state prisons regularly. And as pastors, we see this on all sides, and we serve all of the citizens of our state. But we don't believe, I do not believe, from data, from what we have read and learned, that the death penalty makes our state a safer place, a better place, or a more just community. And certainly the experience in our neighbor states of New Jersey, Maryland, where the death penalty has been abolished, and just a few months ago in Pennsylvania, where Governor Wolf declared a moratorium on the death penalty. And we feel that the experience in our neighbor states is a good teacher to us on that. But again, we have great respect, and certainly respect for those who differ from us.
I think this actually is the reason why it needs to be debated by the full House and not just left in committee. There are a lot of very difficult issues involved in terms of whether it keeps our city our cities and our state safer. You know, coming from Wilmington, which is having a very rough year already in terms of safety and in terms of violence, one could beg the question as to whether the death penalty serves as a deterrent. Especially for our largest city. But having said that, this is why people of conscience and people who we have elected need to debate this fully and completely, and as a full body vote on it and send their decision forward to the governor.
And if I may just echo the rabbi here, I agree, and I think we all agree. That's one of the reasons to follow through with the debate process, so that there's a rigorous debate, so that all sides' voices are presented and can be weighed within that debate and within the larger picture of the safety of the citizens of this state as well. So, yeah.
And they would have the opportunity to hear from their constituents who would differ with our view. As they, you know, if some of the state police who put their lives on the line every day, I mean, you can't take that lightly by any means, but at least we could have the discussion. I think that would be helpful. That's why we elect that.
You're clearly concerned that it might not get out of committee. You think it certainly should be heard by the full House. Do you think it will get out of committee?
We don't know. I think that's why we're sitting here.
When I was a boy, I grew up, some of you may have been to Williamsburg, Virginia. That's where I grew up. And the church that I attended as a boy was the same church that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry attended. And I think they believe, as I think we do, that full participation by citizens in the political process is just essential, but particularly on these kinds of issues. And we really do feel that full debate of this, so that our legislators can hear, as we're hearing from around the state, and make this important decision. Other questions?
How is, I'm not a biblical scholar, but as I understand it, and you mentioned eye for an eye, and I know a lot of people actually misunderstand that. But society has changed so much because it used to be that basically no question, you'd be put to death for various crimes. And how has that changed? Why has society changed? Why have you all spoken out about it when in many cases in the past, churches were in favor of such things?